Hey y'all, hey, it's JJ Conway. Welcome to Building Wealth Together, where our goal is to help you walk in abundance and leave a legacy. It's Mindset Monday, where we take the best teachings on mindset, motivation, and leadership and apply them to your life. This helps you get past the past and grow forward into abundance. Let's get into it. Hey everybody, it's JJ Conway. Today for Mindset Monday, we're going to continue our series on emotional survival for high-stress career fields. And we are coming from the book called Emotional Survival for Law Enforcement, a guide for officers and their families by Dr. Kevin Gilmartin. For those of you who are new to this series, the reason I came in contact with this book is because I spent 3 weekends at the Citizens Police Academy for the Shreveport, run by the Shreveport Police Department. And this is one of the books they gave us to help us understand the kind of dynamic that police officers are going through. We learned about so many things that law enforcement have to go through, including going out to the shooting range and including making a traffic stop. Yep, that's right. Your girl had to make a traffic stop, and it was ridiculous, y'all. Okay, I had my hand on my fake weapon the whole time. Like all those things that we get mad at the cops for doing, I was doing, y'all. I mean, it was something else. It was really eye-opening, okay? But one of the biggest things for me was how similar the police training was to the military training. But to me, it just seemed like in the military, we kind of whitewash it a little bit. We kind of slap some pretty paint on it and send you back to work. And these guys actually took the emotional effects of high stress environments very seriously, even talking about how how stress affects your body and walking and stepping you through the impact of your heart rate rising, your pupils, and everything that happens, and including, which I've got to unpack my notes because, as many of you know, I've moved, and so I don't have the actual notes with me. But when I do, we're going to do a class on this, but including the physiological effects on your thinking. And the more stressed you get, it's actually a physical response. It's not just you being stressed out and being fruity loopy. It's actual physical response, the way that the blood flow and the brain energy shifts when you are highly stressed in those highly stressed situations. It's all the physiology that goes behind the whole flight or fight response, okay? And so learning it was very eye-opening. What I realized is that many of my clients were going through the same things that the cops were going through, and it was impacting their ability to make solid decisions with their money. And that's why I wanted to bring this class to you. Now, if you haven't heard of this before, I'd like you to go to the Building Wealth Together page and either click the podcast page that'll take you to this episode or all the episodes, and it'll take you can get the link from there to buy the book, or you can go to buildingwealthtogether.com and scroll down and look for the classes, click all classes, and scroll down and you'll see emotional survival for high stress career fields. Now, if you're not already a member of Building Wealth Together, it's free, so go ahead and join. It may not show you all the classes till you join, but again, it's free. So why wouldn't you join, right? That's right. Go on in there. All right. So last week we talked about Chapter 1, we introduced the book, we introduced the concept. Today we're talking about Chapter 2, which is officer survival. There's an old adage that says, if it's predictable, it's preventable. Sounds good, right? Well, if that's true, why are these predictable emotional changes and difficulties in high-stress career fields not being prevented? I mean, why aren't people in these kinds of careers, law enforcement, military, why aren't they at least trying some more major efforts to prevent the destructive effects on employees that are brought on by years and years and years of this psychological trauma, right? Why are we not doing more? That's what you and I would say, right? Well, you know, I discovered when I was in this Citizens Police Academy, I discovered that the law enforcement culture actually does value certain types of prevention and survival training, okay? And they actually spend a fair amount of time, way more than I ever got in the military, actually learning how to deal with these issues, okay? Because keeping cops alive on the street is clearly the goal, right? You know, and these injuries out there on the street are visible. They're tangible and they're immediate. Those are things that people really, really care about. It's these psychological and inner injuries that make us more susceptible to the things that happen externally. Okay, so whether you're a police officer or you're a harried mom trying to run around town and get everything done, okay, the impact of stress quickly builds up if not dealt with. Street survival and officer safety, of course, got to be the number one training priority. And if you're in a high stress career field, getting the job done is going to be a high priority. But that doesn't mean that it's the only training priority. If you're in a high stress career field or you're in an environment where you're not getting this kind of training, you may need to shift companies, you may need to shift services, you may need to shift whatever you've got to shift to take care of you. So Dr. Gilmartin starts off this chapter really talking about how survival training works and the value and how the officer deaths have come down over the years from survival training. The interesting thing that he brings out, though, he asks this question. He says, are officers really surviving? Although in many ways, he says, officers are winning the battle of street survival, they appear to be fatally losing the battle of emotional survival. Do you know anybody like that? Maybe you resemble that remark today. On the outside, you got it going on. You're kicking butt and taking names. You're large and in charge at work. When you go home, you are barely surviving emotionally. And some of us, we're not surviving, we're degrading. And it's only a matter of time before what's going on the inside messes up everything we've worked so hard to build up on the outside. I don't really want you to fake it till you make it. I want you to take care of it so that you're making it for real. I was really surprised to discover that police officers have a significantly higher suicide rate than the general population. Because just like the military, actually, I think more so than the military, the police departments generally are going to screen out anybody who's got pre-existing psychological abnormalities, things that are going to preclude them to not being able to handle the load of this job. Now, there are things that you can do, though, to maintain that, and we're going to talk about that as we go through this course. But suicide, even though that is absolutely significant, it's not the only form of self-destruction where these kinds of problems show up, y'all. Depression, social isolation, chronic anger, things like that also lead to the destruction of many other aspects of officers' life. Why is a financial planner talking about this? Well, because a lot of times either the person themselves who's been destructing their life comes to me like they've lost all their money and they don't know what else to do, or their spouse comes to me. Their spouse will come to me because either the spouse is ruining their lives and spending all the money, or the spouse has sunken into depression, fallen into the allure of the magic chair, which we'll talk about in a future chapter, or has otherwise isolated themselves to the point where the spouse who's coming to me has gone out of control with her money or his money and is trying to figure out how to get a handle on it. And it almost always goes back to the fact that money problems aren't usually money problems. Money problems are usually people problems. There's very few people that come to me that don't actually make enough money to survive. Now, there may be lots of people who come to me who don't make enough money to buy a new pair of Jordans every week, but there's very few people who come to me that don't make enough money to survive. And so I'm here to help everybody, you know. But one of the things that we have to understand is being in a high stress environment day in and day out takes a toll on our ability to think rationally, on our ability to think strategically, and our ability to maintain self-discipline. And those are three things you've absolutely got to have to dump debt, build wealth, and leave a legacy. Unfortunately, law enforcement, just like the military, just like moms, just like about 80% of the clients that come to me, find themselves absolutely denying and rationalizing away these destructive behaviors. Oh, that's too bad for them. Not everybody's cut out to be a cop. Oh, that's too bad for them. Not everybody's cut out to be in the military. Oh, that's too bad for them. Not everybody's cut out to be an entrepreneur. How many times have we heard this? But it's not just that people aren't cut out for something. There's an underlying problem that wasn't addressed, but anybody can address the underlying problem. Denial can be deadly, especially since most of us don't introspect to figure out what's going on. We look at the external factors of that person's life, but we don't translate those into our lives. And in fact, what this book talks about with law enforcement is that a lot of times the media, people in the community, they just get all in an uproar. They want to hold the chief accountable. And it's almost like, okay, we hold the chief accountable, we fire the chief, and now the problem goes away. Well, the problem didn't go away. And what we need to do when somebody we know falls into destructive behaviors, in addition to trying to help them, of course, but what we need to do is look at their lives and look at our lives and ask some hard-hitting questions. Why did this happen? How do we make this journey through the career, through entrepreneurship, through motherhood, through fill in the blank? How do we make the journey through this career more easier and more emotionally balanced for those of us who are there? Was this entire crisis avoidable? Can some basic changes in emotional preparation and maintenance of, again, fill in the blank, law enforcement officers, military members, moms and dads, EMTs, firefighters, stock traders, anything that you consider high impact, high emotional stress, right? Can some basic changes in emotional preparation and maintenance take place? Can we teach people who are in these high stress environments to be emotional survivors, the type of officers who can make it through a career, remaining highly productive and effective, and yet having balanced and effective personal lives? Can the journey be made easier? And the reason a lot of us don't like to ask these questions, one is because a lot of times we don't even know to ask them. We don't know anything different from what we've always seen and what we've always done. And you know that old saying, if you keep doing what you've been doing, you're going to keep getting what you've been getting, right? But when I grew up, and maybe when you grew up, we didn't see people who were managing all these things. We saw people turning to substances such as drugs or alcohol or food. We saw people withdrawing into the TV and now social media and porn and all these other things that we shut out the world and we think we're helping ourselves, but we're actually getting worse and worse and less resilient, okay? So we got to ask the hard-hitting questions even if we don't want to answer them, because sometimes answering them is going to make us feel like we have to lose productivity. And this is especially true for the entrepreneurs that come to me. Like, it took a series of car accidents for me to finally get it through my thick skull that I need to take time out to relax and to reflect and to strategically plan. I need to take time out to cry and grieve over things that hurt my heart. I need to take time with my family, not just in the way that I want to spend time with them, but I've got to take time out with the way they want to be spent time with. I don't know if that's an actual sentence, but we're going to roll with it. Okay? Again, these are all things that play into our financial health, because our financial habits are usually attempting to fix these emotional problems. And what I'm encouraging you to do is to begin to lay a framework, begin to lay a foundation in your life that is proactive regarding your emotions and proactive regarding the psychological trauma that life is going to throw at you, especially if you're in an entrepreneurial or some other form of high stress career. So now we're on chapter 4, and this is what is actually taking place. And so I like this chapter because it gives us a matter of perspective. It helps us to look at what changes are happening in us so that we can address those changes before they drown us. You know, some changes are good. I'll tell you a story. I'll tell you a story about me here in a second. It's kind of embarrassing, but I'd rather tell a story about me than somebody else. Embarrassing. So sometimes the changes that happen in us are good, and sometimes the changes that happen in us are bad. When I first came home from deployment and had all that debt, and I didn't know what I was going to do, and I couldn't pay my bills, I went ahead and started doing Mary Kay, and I did Avon, and I did picking, and I did my side business, Precious and Pleasant Boutique. And when I was doing the Mary Kay and the Avon, mostly the Mary Kay, they teach you how to prospect. They teach you how to look at everybody as a potential client, and all that potential client is doing is waiting for you to open up their eyes to the amazing opportunity that is Mary Kay. Now, if you've ever been to my Why Does Your Business Feel Like a JOB presentation, or also the same point is in the why businesses fail, why small businesses fail, and how you can survive, right? The same story is in both. I talk about this time of selling Mary Kay, how I thought I was doing such a great job because I was the only Mary Kay lady in my church, and I was selling everything at a discount, and I was routinely having $1,000 months. My upline got their car and everything, right? And so I needed to make that money. And in retrospect, I can't help but wonder if my church members were, I often get frustrated because I felt like nobody was really supporting me. But when I look back on it and I think about all the clothes that people donated, and I look back at all the meals that people prepared. And now that I'm telling the story again, I'm thinking, well, maybe they were trying to support me with the Mary Kay purchases. Although, sometimes people just want the support they want. Like I would have just liked somebody to get up and say, hey, I'm sorry your husband was fooling around on you while you were gone. I mean, everybody knew it. I was the last person in the church to find out, I'm just like, I just appreciate, I don't want people to feel like if you're listening to this today and you're from that church, I don't want you to feel like I don't appreciate. I absolutely do appreciate. It's just taking me some time to learn that people were really trying to help because they didn't help me in the way that I needed. Okay. I got on a soapbox. I hope I didn't lose my listeners on that. I'm learning on Facebook. When I get on these soapboxes, sometimes I lose people because they didn't come to hear about all that. But you came today to hear about mindset and building wealth. And this is actually a very important mindset for building wealth, which is gratitude. But the main point of this story is because I was hustling so hard with the Mary Kay and because I was following all these trainings, some of their trainings are really kind of deceptive. And I don't know if that's all Mary Kay chapters or if it's just the one that I was in. I wasn't even in the one of the lady who signed me up. I was in a local group, and they would give us these CDs to listen to from their conferences, and they were basically lying to people. And I knew they were lying to people because I had a business before. I'd run Precious and Pleasant Boutique up to that point. It had been like maybe 10 years, right? And so I knew how to run a business, and I was like, you're lying to people, and you're teaching us to lie to other people in the line so we can get their business. But look, y'all, I was $845,000 in debt. I was going to say whatever I needed to say and still be in good conscience with the Holy Ghost to try to get you to try these products and sign up as a Mary Kay lady because I needed some money. Now, I wasn't going to lie to you, and I wasn't going to tell you anything that wasn't true, which is why I was not very good at signing people up. But I found a change in me, the change being that I started seeing everybody in my life, whether an old friend, new acquaintance, somebody on the street, as a prospect. And when you begin to see everybody as a prospect, you start to lose your personality. You start to lose your humanity. You start to lose your touch. You start to lose your grounding. And I know some of you out there are like, well, duh, everybody's a prospect. Okay, but maybe you're not me. I'm called to a particular work. And everybody can't be a prospect for anything other than that work. Okay? And I didn't like who I was becoming, so I had to let Mary Kay go. Although Mary Kay was making me some decent money, I had to let Mary Kay go. And some of these ways we change really sneak up on us. I'll give you another example that's really more in line with the topic today, but is not as universally applicable as the Mary Kay example. But when I was in the military, well, I still technically am. I'm just on terminal leave. But when I was actively working as a military member, I found that during high stress times, I didn't care about my family. I was snappy. I was snippy. I would yell and scream things. I was so irritable. And I didn't even notice it, y'all, because in my heart, I'm still the same nice JJ Conway that loves everybody and will give you the shirt off my back. Now, I'll tell you like it is, but I love you. I don't tell you and don't love you. I love you. My words may be direct, but I love you. I'll do anything for you, right? And so, I won't give you money though. So, so I didn't notice it, but my family began to notice it, and I didn't even know that my family noticed it. Let me tell you how embarrassingly I found out that my family noticed it. Okay. So I'm filling out the paperwork for my insurance, and they need interviews with my family, and they need me to give papers to a couple people who know me, and they're asking questions like, do I take good care of myself? Do I present myself? Do I do my hair? Do I put on my makeup? Do I dress well? Do I spend money okay, or am I frivolous with money? Am I snippy and snappy at home? There's a whole survey about the impact of this car accident on my personality. And I was so disappointed to find out that not only did my husband say that I had become very poor with money. I was hot, y'all, but he was right. I didn't know it, but that was a symptom. That was a symptom of what I was going through, but I didn't know it until a couple years later. But not only did he say that I had grown bad with money. I mean, this is a lady who teaches money, but he started outlining the impact on him and the boys, and how mean I'd been to them, and how snippy I'd been to them, and how irritable I'd been, and how every little thing they do. I was so embarrassed. And I give the report. I give the report because my husband and I we were geographically separated. So he scans it and emails it to me, and I take it with me to the doctor, and I'm sitting there in the doctor's office reading it, and I'm telling you, I just want to cry. We don't always realize the impact of stress on us, y'all. We don't. And we think everything's okay because we're getting it done and we're making it happen, but everything ain't okay. And so we want to dig into what is actually taking place here. And that's what Dr. Gilmartin goes into with chapter 4. All right. So before we can say, okay, here's what you need for help, we got to understand that there is a change taking place. Whether you're law enforcement, entrepreneurship, mother, whatever it is that you're doing, whatever it is that's bringing a lot of stress to your life right now, there's a change that happens. You start to see people differently. You look at things from a different perspective. Okay? The people that we spend the majority of our time with see the world pretty much the same way we do. It's a normalization process. And when you don't normalize, you become an outcast, kind of like Big Mouth JJ Conway, right? Like, I wish I would have learned this earlier. I'm pretty sure my mom tried to teach me this. I was probably just too hard-headed to listen, right? Like, when you don't fit in, you set yourself up for a world of hurt, right? Despite all of our little movies that try to brainwash kids into being independent and marching to the beat of their own drum, that is not how society works. And so if you're going to be an independent person, you're going to be an independent thinker, you're going to be an independent entrepreneur, you're going to be an independent doer of justice and righteousness in this world and uplift people instead of tearing them down, you got to be prepared for the fact that you are not going to fit in. Okay, that brings a whole separate kind of stress. Okay, that's not the stress I'm talking about right now. I'm talking about where we all kind of fall in line with each other. See, that's what people do. That's why, man, was it Wayne Dwyer or Jim Rohn? I can't remember. That's why somebody was saying, if you look at the 5 people you spend the most amount of time with, the average of their life is where you're going to be in 5 years. And so if you've surrounded yourself, or you're going to work every day with people who have over time gone from being gung-ho and they want to change the world and they want to do good, to now being disillusioned and disappointed and disgusted with the world, you are either eventually going to change to mold into that, you are going to expend an extreme amount of energy to counteract that. That's where my stress used to come in the military. Or you're going to end up moving on. So we have to realize that these are processes. It's a very small process over time. But you know how it goes. Now, this one was by Jim Rohn. Success is the series of tiny little steps you take every single day over a long time, consistent steps. But failure is also the addition of a series of consistent little steps, little tiny steps that you take every day, right? So this is a process, and we have to realize when we are being affected by the process. Some of the things that let us know we are being affected by the process is cynicism. Now, I say this, and I know that most people in the world value sassiness and cynicism. Like, you don't want to be the smiley, happy Pollyanna, right? I get that. Nobody wants to be the smiley face, happy Pollyanna. That like sets you up for being a target, right? But seriously, we've got to have a positive attitude. And when that cynicism starts kicking in, we know we've got to start paying attention to what's going on with us. You know, not only cynicism, but when you find yourself thinking that everybody is an idiot, man, if everybody's an idiot, the biggest idiot is the person staring you back in the mirror. Because there's so much that you can learn from people, even if they're not, quote unquote, as good as you think you are, right? But a lot of times we start to fall into that trap because A, we're unhappy with ourselves. B, we're unhappy with the results of our choices and the results of our thinking. And B, we're trying to make ourselves feel better. And a lot of times it doesn't work, okay? So I just want to encourage you to take a look at that. I mean, we don't want to be naive. You know, the Bible says, be wise as serpents, but harmless as doves, right? But I want to tell you, when that cynicism starts creeping in, you know you're starting to have a problem. Another problem that we have is that over time, we become more comfortable and we desire more to hang around our co-workers who share our experiences than we do our families. And I seem to fall into this trap no matter what I'm doing. Like in the military, everybody got the job done. They wanted to do things. And when I would come home, people just want to watch TV and sit around doing nothing. And I just wanted to be around where people were making things happen. Then I became an entrepreneur and I would go to these conferences and everybody was all uplifting and encouraging. And in my personal life, I would go home or I would go to church and everybody was just trying to tear me down. Like, oh my goodness, we got to realize that everybody isn't trying to tear you down. Everybody isn't incompetent. Everybody isn't clueless. Everybody isn't naive. You are changing. And maybe everybody at your job is cynical and everybody at your job understands this how everybody else is idiots and a waste of your time. But you can't take that home. And when you do start taking that home, now you're at risk for isolating yourself from your family. And let me tell you something. Military, law enforcement, whatever it is, fill in the blank organization you're in. When you're no longer effective enough to do the mission, they no longer need you. And when it's time for you to go, it's time for you to go. And if you alienate the only support system that really, truly cares about you, it doesn't matter how much wealth you build up. It really doesn't. Okay. So I want you to look at these things in your life and in the life of those that you support. And if you see them creeping up, it's time to take some action. It's time to do something about the stress. Now, before we get into what to do about it, we're going to talk about some more signs that this is affecting you. I hope you'll join me next week as we continue on our Mindset Mondays. I'm JJ Conway. Thank you for listening. Y'all take care and be blessed. Love the podcast? Be sure to like, subscribe, and forward to 3 friends. You can ask a question or take a life-changing class at buildingwealthtogether.com. Now, go walk in abundance and leave a legacy.